I want to send a special thank you to all my new subscribers. If you have not subscribed, make sure you do so and hit that bell so that way you receive notifications when I upload videos. Ronnie Ortiz-Magro and his on-again, off-again girlfriend Jen Harley are back in the headlines again for domestic violence. I believe this is the 9th or 10th time. They really truly do have a very volatile relationship. Now, you guys probably remember them because they were the popular cast members from the Jersey Shore. Some of you guys remember Ronnie because he dated Khloe Kardashian's best friend, Malika Haqq, back in December of 2016. So you know anything that happens involving the Kardashians or Malika Haqq, everybody knows about it. So Ronnie and Malika were together for about a month until she broke it off, basically saying they were two different people and she didn't agree with the way that he expressed himself verbally and physically, and she wasn't accustomed to that. So fast forward to July 2017, that's when Jen and Ronnie started dating. Now, about 9 months later, Jen gave birth to their baby girl, Ariana Sky, in April of 2018. So the first incident that they were involved in occurred the same month that they got together, in July of 2017. There was an incident at one of the Vegas hotels, and according to Ronnie, he and Jen were in the VIP section of the club, and there was a fight that broke out, and he was trying to protect Jen. Somebody threw a bottle and it broke on Ronnie's hand. Now, according to the hotel officials, they told a completely different version of what happened. They basically said that Ronnie broke a bottle that he was holding, and he received several lacerations to his hand. Now, later on that same night, a witness claims that they saw Ronnie and his girlfriend Jen coming out of the bathroom with blood on the both of them, and they were being escorted out by security. So the first thing in my head was, were they fighting amongst themselves and it got a little bit too heated? I don't know. But Ronnie ended up receiving stitches for the injuries to his hand. Now fast forward to the second and third incidents that happened in April of 2018. The first incident, Jen accused Ronnie of getting close to another woman while he was filming the Jersey Shore episode. And then he later on did an interview with Us Weekly, basically according to Us Weekly, that in that interview he stated that he cheated on Jen. Now, Ronnie came out and said that he did not say that. He denied those claims, but he turned around and accused Jen of cheating on him. He basically said that she kept all of the old sex videos that she had between her and her ex, and that escalated to both of them throwing insults on Instagram at each other. Now, Ronnie called Jen a gutter hoe. Jen called Ronnie a cokehead father. Now, they were doing all of this on Instagram, and people's just screenshotting the messages going back and forth. Now, that escalated to a physical confrontation between the both of them on Instagram Live. It got pretty bad between them that month. So, moving along to June 2018. There was two incidents that occurred in June of 2018. There was a heated argument that occurred at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, and they had an argument over who was caring for their daughter. Now, this fight actually began after they found their dog dead at the bottom of their pool. Jen claimed that she had suspicion that Ronnie had killed the dog. Okay? So they had been fighting ever since then, and it spilled over at the Planet Hollywood. And so Jen had called the police, but she ended up leaving the scene before they got there. Once police did arrive on the scene, Ronnie told the cops that Jen had punched him in the head and had spit on him. They didn't arrest her that night, but they did take a police report about it. So later on, again, the same month, they had another heated argument while they were driving home, this time after attending a barbecue. And Jenna hit Ronnie in the face, and Ronnie told Jen to pull the car over so he could get out. And as he was trying to exit the vehicle, he was taking his seatbelt off. Jen sped off, dragging him alongside of the car. Mind you, this happened while their 2-month-old daughter was in the vehicle. Okay. Once cops got there, they looked and saw that there was blood on the inside and outside of the vehicle. Cops determined that there was a mutual battery that had occurred between the both of them, but that Jen was the primary aggressor and she was arrested. Now, the DA later on, they ended up dropping the charges because they didn't have enough evidence to go after her for. So Ronnie ended up taking his daughter into his own custody once she was arrested, and he was seeking more of like a formal custody agreement. But later on, after speaking with some of their friends, their friends was basically saying they were concerned for Ronnie's safety because of everything that had been leading up to that event. And he ended up saying that he stayed with Jen because he was afraid that she was going to go after him and try to get custody of their daughter. So it was a lot going on between this couple. Mind you, in between each of these incidents, they were getting back together and they were attending events, barbecue events, birthday bashes. They were seen together, walking out in public, holding hands in between all of these incidents, which is completely insane. But now, the 6th incident happened October of 2018, where Ronnie had posted a picture on his Instagram showing bruises to the face and basically, in other words, accused Jen of assaulting him and causing that black eye. What ended up happening is him and Jen got into a heated discussion, turned physical, and Jen hit him with a phone and punched him in the face. Now, police encouraged Ronnie to go ahead and file a police report, but he did not, and so there wasn't anything that they could do about that. Again, later that month, Ronnie and Jen got into another heated argument because Jen decided to leave her 12-year-old son. I believe that son was by another relationship. And their infant baby at the time, she decided to leave the 12-year-old son and the infant baby at home alone while she decided to go out and party with some of her friends. Somehow Ronnie found out about it, came over to the house to pick the baby up. While he was there, he videotaped the kids being left home alone. He took the baby and went back home. When Jen came back to the house, she saw that the baby was gone. She ended up going over to Ronnie's house to get the child, and that's where Ronnie and the aunt blocked her from entering the home, and they refused to give the child back to her. And later on, the cops were called to the house that night. So there was a lot going on. I'm not even done, you guys. This stuff continues on and on. This July, another incident happened in July, which was the 8th incident that I see of, in July of 2019. They were attending a New Year's Eve party, and they ended up getting into an argument because Jen spilled a drink on Ronnie's shoes. Ronnie ended up leaving, but what actually happened was, yes, she spilled a drink on his shoes, but she also threw an ashtray at his head, causing cuts to his lips, nose, and forehead. And it left bad injuries that he could even see the next morning when he went to file a police report. And so while he was up there filing a police report, cops was able to see those injuries, and they took additional pictures. But anyway, after he left the party, Jen leaves the party and she goes back to her home, where she says that somebody had broke in and they didn't take anything, but they smashed her TVs, her vase, pictures, glass frames, overturned furniture, and basically ransacked the entire house. But it didn't really help Jen, because she was the one that was later arrested after she ended up calling the cops while she was at home and basically claiming that somebody had a gun. Once the cops arrived, they ran her name and noticed that she had a warrant, and so she was arrested for that whole incident that occurred at that New Year's Eve party from her throwing the ashtray. Jen had accused Ronnie of breaking into her house. Now, they didn't have any proof that he did that, so police could not arrest him or charge him with that. Now, Jen was able to pull video back in December of 2018 that did show that Ronnie destroyed some of her home security camera, the one that was outside of her front door. And he was yelling at her to open the door, and she refused. And after she refused, he threw an object through her window. So that she was able to show cops, hey, I do have proof that he came prior and he did create damage to my property. So they were looking into that, but they never charged him with it. Now, in October this month, they ended up renting an Airbnb in LA. And around 2:30 a.m. in the morning, they got into a heated argument. According to Ronnie, he claims that Jen had dangled their child over a fence after she had been drinking, and he was afraid for this child's safety. So he ended up threatening to kill her, according to Jen and what the police statement or the police report said. And he ends up slapping and punching Jen in the face, and he chases her outside of the home with a knife. So Jen's out in the street, screaming for help. And this is happening all while she's holding their 18-month-old daughter. He ends up yelling at Jen to get back in the house, which she does, and he locks them all in the house. Once police came, they were, telling him to come outside, but he wasn't listening to any of the commands that they were giving him. So cops had to kick in the door, and they ended up tasing him so they could arrest him, and then they ended up charging him with kidnapping. So they ended up passing a protective order until October 11th, which basically states that Ronnie was unable, he's not allowed to come within 100 feet or 100 yards of Jen. But at that time, he was able to see the daughter. Now, Jen was supposed to have went back to court to extend that protective order all the way up until Ronnie's arraignment, and she was going to ask the judge if in the protective order if they would include the daughter, so that way he wouldn't be allowed to come near her or the child. Now, this is what is all in the headlines right now. So the situation between them, like I said, has been a volatile situation for a long time, since these two have been in a relationship with each other. And it's a horrible situation, because now it's not only conflict between them two, now you involved your child, your young child, not to mention her 12-year-old son is involved in all this as well. So, I don't really think that parents understand what this type of situation does to a kid. Children who are exposed to domestic violence in a home, they're going to have, physical and mental health problems. They're going to be at risk for being violent in their own, future relationships, experiencing emotional, mental, and social damage. A lot of people find it hard to trust people, after dealing or seeing certain things as a kid. Some people are uncomfortable with people being close to them, being in their, their safe space. socially isolated. Now, I have to admit that I was exposed to family domestic violence growing up as a kid. And so I understand very well the effects that has on a kid. And still to this day, I don't really talk much in detail about the things that I experienced as a kid. In total, only 1 or 2 people even knows about my childhood, the type of things that I experienced as a kid. But most people who meet me would never even know those stories because I don't feel comfortable expressing them or talking about them. It was only until, because my childhood was very abnormal, but because I grew up in it in so many years, it became that norm for me. And it was only until, I became 18 and I ended up leaving home, I was able to get around other people and saw how they interacted with their family, and I was able to see, what normal family relationships looked like. I'm not saying that, every family doesn't have their own issue, but there's a difference between normal and relationships that isn't normal. And so, watching other people, I was able to come out of my shell. Even though I still struggle with certain things, as far as like being comfortable in certain, spaces, being comfortable around large crowds of people. Because as a kid, I was isolated, isolated from friends, family. When you're dealing with an abuser, they don't like you to be around other people, so that way you can tell other people what's going on. So I still deal with that piece of trying to overcome being around large crowds till this day. So, only those who know my situation would know when I'm uncomfortable. Otherwise, people who don't know can't tell. So, but I will say that the things that I experienced as a kid, it made me a stronger woman. It made me a stronger woman than, what my mother was. And there are things that I refuse to tolerate as an adult when it comes to dealing with certain relationships. There's certain behavior I don't tolerate. And so, but what parents need to understand is that, children, when they're watching you're fighting, when they're involved in between domestic violence, those children suffer the most traumatic stress. They're watching how their parents are interacting with each other. And a lot of times children suffer in silence. You won't ever even know that they're dealing with something behind the stuff that you're doing behind closed doors. Because I was one of those kids. I suffered in silence. I never talked about it. And still to this day, me and my siblings, we don't discuss it. It's not the norm for us to talk about those things behind closed doors. We've kind of gotten to a place where we've tucked it away in a dark hole and we've moved past. And so we don't discuss it. It just doesn't come up. So the thing I want to relay to parents is that if you are involved in a relationship and you have domestic violence in that relationship, the female's being abused or the man is being abused, you're really hurting your children when you are exposing them to that type of behavior. And they're going to have traumatic situations that they're going to have to overcome as an adult. Those images and the things that they see as a kid will constantly play in their head. They're going to always remember that. It's going to affect their daily lives until they are able to find some type of resources to cope with it. Or they're going to turn out like me and my siblings, where they just find a place where they feel comfortable and they just try not to remember what happened. And so even that is not healthy. So if you are, in that type of situation and you do have domestic violence, I always encourage people to reach out for help, because you're doing more damage to your family than what you really know. And I know that a lot of times the guys and females will try to stay in unhealthy situations because they're afraid that if they separate, the child is going to either go with one parent or the other. And those are the wrong reasons to try to stay in a relationship that's unhealthy. The best thing to do is to leave that relationship, and if it's at all possible, to try to resume a more healthy, cordial co-parenting relationship. But you need to really understand the levels and the degree of trauma that you are experiencing and that your children are experiencing. And honestly, it is not worth that. And this is coming from somebody who has lived that lifestyle as a kid. So reach out and ask for help from someone. There's a lot of different domestic violence hotlines that you can call. There's people out there, there's resources out there to help you. But you guys tell me, what your thoughts are on this whole entire topic with Jen Harley and what's his name? Ronnie Ortiz-Magro. Why would I don't know. I don't want to say that. I'm not going to say that. You guys tell me what your thoughts are, and I'll see you in the next video.